gradually began to replace mining as the foundation of the economy. Irrigation began slowly to expand, and then much more rapidly expanded beginning in the 1930s with the beginning of the construction of the projects. Now here's a chart of the amount of irrigated land in the state from 1870 to the present. You can see in 1870 it's 60, that should be 60,000 acres, but it reads 60 million.
That reads 60 million.
Yeah, that's supposed to be 60,000, okay? Good, knock that off there. All right, 1900, 1.5 million, 1920, 4.5 million. And look at it, doubles between 1920 and 1978, 8.6 million. And between 1978 and today, it's just barely gone up another 1 million acres. In 1873, President Ulysses Grant and the Congress authorized the Army Corps of Engineers to do a study of the San Joaquin Valley to see if it was somewhere where irrigation could take place. Yet from the 1870s until the 1930s, the federal government had little or nothing to do with water policy or activity in California. And it was not until 1914 that the state government of California began to get directly involved in water issues. And that year, a referendum was approved by the population that asserted state sovereignty over water, right? Which is very important legal grounds for the state being able to determine what the, where and when and how water can be used. In the same period, the state, working with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, began the implementation of a flood control plan for the Sacramento River, which began building a carefully thought out network of levees and bypasses to prevent and limit flood damage. Now, Sacramento really floods, right? And I mean, the city of Sacramento many times has been under 20 feet of water. You know, entirety of downtown, the whole city. Right? So flood control, you know, on the Sacramento River Valley is very important. Right? But it was not until the 1930s and continuing into the early 1970s that the statewide water management system of California was built. FDR began it, and from 1959 to 1967, Governor Edmund G. Brown completed the system. Pat Brown, as he liked to be called, unlike his son Jerry, who we all know, was an FDR Democrat who believed in progress and defined progress as creating a future for the generations to come by building a foundation in in-depth infrastructure. And that's what he did. Now here's the first dam built in California. This is Mission Dam on the San Diego River. You know, it was completed in 1816, 200 years ago. It was built by the Catholic missionaries, and it was part of the San Diego Mission. It was about 6 miles from the mission, and a flue was set up 6 miles long that took water down to the mission. And this is in Mission Park in San Diego, and you can visit it. And Carol and I actually went there in December, and I walked across from here to here. Now, it's about 10 feet high, about 100 feet across. You know. And the records on it are not really very complete, but generally the consensus is it took 6 or 7 years to build, all by hand, of course. Right? Now, California has been called the most hydrologically unaltered landmass on the planet. Now, through this whole presentation, you'll notice it's the biggest in the country, biggest in the world, the most, and it just, that the big adjective just applies, and we'll get more of it here. But anyway, but the system is, but it is a system of massive hydrologic works that moves enormous amount of water great distances. And that's the best description I've seen of what of the system. It includes 1,200 major dams. The two biggest irrigation projects in the world, right? The longest aqueduct in the world, and more than 1,000 reservoirs, including some of the largest in the country. The system was essentially completed in 1973, 40 years ago, and there's been only one major reservoir built since. No dams, no aqueducts, and the population has increased by 15 million people in that same 40 years. Now there's 6 main projects of dams, aqueducts, and associated infrastructure that gather, transport, and distribute the water in California. They're all separate projects, but they are an interconnected whole, a statewide system. Here again is the map of the major elements of the system. Okay, so now we'll cover a little more than we did last time, the same map. The Los Angeles Aqueduct. The Central Valley Project, down a little bit. Nope. Okay. Central Valley Project starts up here at Shasta Lake and Shasta Dam, feeds into the Sacramento River, feeds into the Delta, and out of the Delta, the Central Valley, or the Delta-Mendota Canal from the Delta flows to San Luis Reservoir right here. Right? Now, there are other elements, and we'll see that in another map in a little while, of the Central Valley Project, including canals that go this way, here. There's a lot there, but we'll see that in another map in a little bit here. Right? Okay, so that's the Central Valley Project. The State Water Project begins Lake Oroville, and we went through that before. It goes all the way down to Riverside in Southern California. Then the Colorado River projects, right? Colorado River here flows down here and then flows into Mexico, right? So you have the Colorado River Aqueduct, and from there you get the San Diego Aqueduct. Then you have the All-American Canal here, and from it you get the Coachella Canal. So that's number 4. Then the Hetchy system, which is up here. Built and completed in the 1930s, takes water from the Sierras directly to San Francisco, built by the city of San Francisco. And the Luma Aqueduct goes from the Sierras, short Sierras, into the east bay of the East Bay of the Bay Area there. Okay? For Southern California, 90% of the water consumed comes hundreds of miles from 3 of the projects: the Los Angeles Aqueduct, the Colorado River Aqueduct, and the State Water Project. So I'm going to discuss the first 4 of the 6 that we just went through here. But we've got to talk about the Delta first. Anybody familiar with the Delta a little bit? Okay. All right. The Delta is the heart of the Central Valley and the State Water Projects. But it's also the center of conflict over California's water present and future. Here's a picture of a small part of the delta. You know, because, and here's a map of the delta. Okay, good. All right. So the delta is an area encompassing 730,000 acres of rivers, levees, waterways, farms, and islands at the northwest end of San Francisco Bay. It's where the Sacramento River, coming here, the San Joaquin River, coming up from the south, and other rivers, Macalumi, Cavaleras, I can't even remember. Anyway, all right, so you got about 6 rivers coming in right into this area, creating this estuary delta region, which then flows into San Francisco Bay by this route here. Okay?
Is that the Hetchy or is it different route? The Hetchy?
Hetchy actually goes south of the bay. Right? This is the northwest end of the bay.
Okay.
Right? Well, actually, the Hetchy goes across the bay, actually near the bridge that goes over in the south part of the bay.
San Mateo.
San Mateo Bridge, yeah.
That's south
Okay.
of the city.
Okay, now, the delta is not only where rivers collide, you know, it's where interests collide. Because water for agriculture, you know, the various, you know, interests, you know, I don't like the term, but that's what I'm thinking of right now. I mean, you have the Sacramento River Valley farmers, right? You have the farmers in the delta itself, and there's a lot of farmland in the delta. You know, if you go back to that picture, you actually see that's farmland. You know, it's on hundreds of islands. Right? So you have water for San Joaquin Valley farmers, comes from the delta. Fishermen whose lives depend upon salmon to migrate up the rivers. The ports of Sacramento and Stockton, which require free-flowing, adequately, you know, depth rivers. And of course, the urban populations of the Bay Area and Southern California, whose water supply, as much as 30% of the water supply of Southern California flows through the delta. The problem in the delta is there's not enough water there, not enough flowing in, you know. And if you pump too much of it out, then you get saltwater intrusion that will destroy the farmers in the delta and also lower the water level such that the ships that need to go to Sacramento and Stockton can't go. Right? So this is a real serious problem. Right? Now, if we have NAWAPA, right? Number 12. NAWAPA, the Oregon-California extension, would bring more water into the Sacramento River system. Right? So here's the Oregon-Columbia border right here. Right? And what NAWAPA would do, what we would do with NAWAPA is increase the flow into the Columbia River here, and then at the Dalles, Oregon, and the Deschutes River, just literally reverse the Deschutes River. The Deschutes River flows from central Oregon up to the Columbia. Right? It flows north. And what we do is we build canals, pumping stations, and take one hell of a lot of water and pump it right up beside the north flowing river. We pump it south. Now, that then to southern Oregon, and then you have two branches. One to the Klamath River Basin, the Klamath River, which, you know, right now, just in the last week, 2 weeks, the Klamath River and it's been going on for years, but it really hit the wall this last 2 weeks. Klamath River, because it's affected by drought also, is very, very low. And both court decisions and water law that's 150 years old, means that the first of use is first of right. That is, the first people who use the water from the water source, a river or stream, actually have first right to it, into the infinite future, supposedly. So who has the first rights to the Klamath River water? The Indian tribes. So the Indian tribes invoked the law 2 weeks ago. And hundreds of ranchers, cattle ranchers in the Klamath River Valley Basin have been cut off of all water. And you got a drought going on. Okay? Something like 70 or 80,000 head of cattle that are dependent upon the irrigation from the Klamath River and its tributaries. Those cattle have been cut off. And the ranchers are madly selling the cattle or shipping them out or paying outrageous prices to bring hay and feed in for the cattle. And there's no solution except NAWAPA. There's no short-term solution for these guys, even though they all have some kind of dream that there can be. Right? Now, so the other branch of the extension, here's the Klamath River Basin. The other branch goes into the Sacramento, increasing the flow of the Sacramento, which will flow into the Delta. Now, that's the only solution. Now, then for the Delta, still, the environmentalists come in. Right? They got to get in on it too. Right? And the major conflict has been over the Delta smelt. Now, the Delta smelt only exists in the Delta. It's not even edible, except smallmouth bass like it, I guess. One of the farmers up in Visalia said that. But it is on the endangered species list. And the pumps in the Delta, which sends the water into the state and the Central Valley projects, were all but shut down in December and January. And 800,000 acre feet of water in December, January was not pumped out of the Delta into the aqueducts and sent to San Luis Reservoir. The reason San Luis Reservoir is at 21% is because of the Delta smelt and the Endangered Species Act that protects it, so that, guess what? A few hundred do not get chewed up by the pumps. And it's beyond absurd, right? They keep a count of how many Delta smelt get chewed up, right? And when it reaches 217, then they start shutting down the pumps. Because the limit for the year is 330 or something. Where the hell they get these numbers? Who knows, right? But that's what it is. So, anyway, so 800,000 acre feet of water would have provided one hell of a lot of the water required in the San Joaquin Valley this summer that is not there. The lives of the people of the valley, the food they produce for millions more, appear to be less important than a fish that is about this long. Right? Just one more reason to destroy the environmentalists. The proposal, which is Governor Brown is actually promoting, is to build a peripheral canal. Now this proposal was actually made first in 1965, almost 50 years ago, right? Which was even before Jerry Brown's first term as governor. It was actually toward the end of his father's second term as governor. It's not a solution. It is not going to add any more water. It's an adjustment of what water exists now and how it's distributed in California. It'll route water under the delta instead of through it, supplying the canals for the central and state water project. So we'll begin up here just south of Sacramento River, and the two tunnels, and they're big. Right? We'll then take the water under the delta to the pumping stations and the beginning of the two major aqueducts here. Okay? So there's no short-term solution, and the delta peripheral canal for the delta, if it's approved, will take 10 years to build. Right? So even adjusting the problem a little bit and saving a few smelt and allowing a more regular flow of the pumping, that would be 10 years into the future. So letting the smelt be chewed up will alleviate the problem somewhat. So that should be done. But it doesn't solve the crisis. Only a total mobilization of the nation's physical economy to build NAWAPA is going to solve the water problems in the West and the Midwest too. So desalinization, well, that could add something. And there's a few dams and reservoirs that have been on the books for 50 years that should be built, and that'll help a little bit, but none of it will solve it. Okay? Now, just a few words on desalinization. There's one large desalinization plant being built right now that is in Carlsbad, being built by the San Diego Water District. It'll produce 56,000 acre-feet of water per year. Remember, an acre-foot takes care of 2 families, so you're looking enough water for 100,000 families. 56,000 a year. Now, that's about 7% of the San Diego Water District's annual usage. So it makes a little dent in it. That 7% they get from the presently get from the Metropolitan Water District, which comes from the State Water Project, all the way up in Northern California, or from the Colorado River aqueduct. Right? And so that 7% then could be used by other communities in Southern California. But the plant won't be ready for another 5 years. And San Diego is going to be paying $2,000 an acre foot for this desalinated water, which they're paying now about $1,000 an acre foot to the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California. So it's going to double it. But they think, it's going to get worse. So we're going to do it. Because the water prices are going to go way up, they think. I mean, that's what they're thinking on it. Otherwise, there's no other desalinization plant of any significant size either being built or planned. And with the announcement of the permanent shutdown of the San Onofre nuclear power plant, there wouldn't be any energy for a desalinization plant anyway. Okay? So I want to go through each of the 4 projects briefly. I'm not going to detail the hundreds of individual projects within each element of the whole system, but the map that we're putting up now will give you an idea of its magnitude and its complexity. Now, this is the map of the State Water Project and the Central Valley Project, and all of its, not all of its elements, but a lot of them, right? So, You see that map we passed around has a little bit of it, but it's just literally hundreds and hundreds of facilities. You know, dams, canals, pipelines, siphons, levees, you know, aquifers, aqueducts. You know, it just goes on and on. I mean, it is really, really a masterpiece of construction. Right? Now, so the 4 projects. First, the Los Angeles Aqueduct. It's the only one of the major projects in the state that was not built by FDR or Pat Brown. It was built by the city of Los Angeles. Construction completed in 1913 and expanded in 1970. At the time it was completed, 1913, it was called the greatest engineering project in the world. Now that designation only lasted 1 year, because in 1914, the Panama Canal was completed. Right? So the aqueduct carries more than, water more than 300 miles from Owens Valley and the Mono Lake Basin by gravity. There are no pumps, all downhill. And that's one of the reasons we got that designation. Nobody had ever before, you know, sent water 300 miles by gravity alone. And then what we'll see when we go through this in more detail a few weeks from now is all kinds of engineering breakthroughs that were encompassed by the building of the Los Angeles Aqueduct. The 2 aqueducts, because it expanded in 1970, deliver an average of 430 million gallons of water per day to Los Angeles. That's about 400,000 acre feet. Number 2, the Central Valley Project. Number 16. Okay, the Central Valley Project. The state initiated the project in 1933, right? But that was the collapse underway. The state was broke. So the state, 1933, FDR is inaugurated. So the state says, oh, let's go talk to Franklin Roosevelt. And Roosevelt says, yes, that's a great project. Right? And he assigned the Bureau of Reclamation to build it, beginning in 1935. It delivers 7 million acre feet of water per year, provides water to 3.1 million people, and irrigates more than 3 million acres in the San Joaquin Valley. It consists of more than 40 dams and reservoirs, 25 canals that cover more than 2,000 miles, and 28 hydroelectric plants. The main elements of the project were completed in 1951. And as we've gone through a couple times, the project begins up on the Sacramento River, Shasta Lake, flows into the Delta, and then down into the San Joaquin Valley. And you see a lot of the other elements of the project. These are all separate canals. Anyway, that's enough for me on this. Okay. Okay, so the 17. Let's go down. This is Shasta Dam, where the Central Valley Project begins. At the time of completion, it was the largest dam in the country, if not the largest in the world. I can't remember. Right? But that only lasted for about 6 months until the Grand Coulee Dam was finished. Right? So that's where it begins. And so water from the Shasta and other reservoirs then flows into the Delta. Now, okay, go back to 16. Well, I want to point out one thing that nowhere else in the world had this been done. It may have been done now, but I don't know. Right? So the Delta Mendota Canal goes south, parallel to the north flowing San Joaquin River here. Right? And the canal is literally 250 miles of the canal is right parallel with I-5. You know, driving up to San Francisco, everybody saw it, I'm sure. Right? Right. But what the quip is that this is the only place in the world where man has made a river run backwards. Right? So that's, you know, but we're proposing it with NAWAPA with the Deschutes River too. Right? So now at the San Luis Reservoir, the aqueduct, the Central Valley Aqueduct, the Delta Mendota Canal, joins with the State Water Project Canal, and they both create the San Luis Aqueduct, or reservoir. Right? And then from the San Luis Reservoir, the State Water Project then goes south, through the valley and over the mountains. Now, let's look at a video, a 2-minute video of the Central Valley, which, if I remember right, this was made in 1947, but I'm not, it may have been a little later.
The idea for a comprehensive
Go in the garden.
water project in California began as early as 1856. Agriculture in the fertile Central Valley was at odds with seasonal water patterns. Rainfall, heaviest in the winter, would flood much of the valley and drain to the sea, leaving widespread drought during the height of the growing season. A statewide system of storage and diversion from the wet north to the drier south matured by 1931, but by then it was clear a project of such scope could not be achieved without federal aid. The keystone of the project was a massive multi-purpose dam on the upper Sacramento River. Shasta Dam near Redding was begun in 1938. More than 600 feet tall, it traps more than 4.5 million acre-feet of water and can generate over 500,000 kilowatts of power. A massive pumping plant was built in the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta to hoist water into the Delta Mendota Canal. Gravity moves the water 117 miles south to the San Joaquin Valley, where it replaces the natural flows of the San Joaquin River. Friant Dam diverts the natural flow of the San Joaquin both north and south to the agricultural fields throughout the southern portion of the valley. The Central Valley Project, with its 20 dams, 11 power plants, and some 500 miles of canals and aqueducts, transformed the Central Valley into the most productive agricultural region in the world, with more than $3.5 billion in annual revenues.
When was that made?
I think it was 1947. Okay, now here's the picture of President John Kennedy and Governor Pat Brown inaugurating the construction of the San Luis Dam on August 18, 1962. This is where Kennedy and Brown both push the plunger, and as Kennedy said, "I'm happy to be here today to blow up your valley." All right. Now, number 3, the State Water Project. Number 20. The State Water Project is the largest state-built infrastructure project in the country. It was at the time, and it may still be, you know, the largest infrastructure project built by a state anywhere in the world. Okay? Construction began in 1961, completed in 1972. The system consists of 22 dams, 21 lakes and reservoirs, 17 pumping plants, 5 hydroelectric power plants, more than 700 miles of major canals and pipelines, and includes the 444-mile-long California aqueduct, again, the longest in the world. The water, it carries water from north of Redding at Oroville Dam, through the San Joaquin Valley, and then pumped 2,000 feet over the Tehachapis into Southern California, and goes to Los Angeles area and Riverside. On the average, the State Water Project delivers 2.3 million acre-feet of water per year. It provides water for 23 million people and irrigates 750,000 acres. The project begins with the dams on the rivers and tributaries of the Feather River, which then flows into the Sacramento. On the Feather River, the tallest dam in the United States, Oroville Dam, at 770 feet, also creates the project's largest reservoir, like Oroville, at 3.5 million acres. That's Oroville Dam. 770 feet. What's Hoover Dam, 500, right? Something like that.
I think it's 700 something. I think it's 700 something.
Is it?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think it's 500. But anyway,
Grand Coulee's
but
500.
Oroville's the tallest and the highest in the country. So here's what the aqueduct looks like as it flows through the San Joaquin Valley. For Southern California, this system pours enough water into the